Okay, let's kick things off with something pretty wild. Did you know that we humans, collectively, move more soil around the planet each year than all natural processes combined?
Yeah, it's staggering when you actually stop and think about it. Farming, construction.
All of it.
That finding from Wilkinson and McElroy back in 2007, it really hammered home the sheer scale of how we're altering the ground beneath our feet.
And that ties directly into something one of you listeners brought up, soil erosion. Curiosity about why land seems to be degrading and what the ripple effects are.
It's a really important question.
So in this deep dive, we're going to explore exactly that. The forces behind erosion, why it matters so much, and crucially, what can be done. We're drawing heavily on soil erosion and its control, which is just packed with detail.
It really is a comprehensive resource. It lays out the different types, the causes, the control measures, everything.
Consider this your shortcut, then, to really getting your head around the complexities of soil erosion.
It helps you understand the why behind it all. See the landscape differently.
So let's start with the big picture, soil degradation overall. The FAO, that's the Food and Agriculture Organization, they estimate something like 2 billion hectares of land globally had degraded soils.
That's huge.
It's an enormous area, and it's important to distinguish, between vegetative degradation, where the plants are suffering, but the soil might still be okay-ish, and actual soil degradation.
Right.
Within that 2 billion, most is classified as slightly or moderately degraded. So there's potential for recovery if we intervene in the right way.
But not all of it is recoverable, is it? I think I saw a figure about some being, well, beyond help.
That's right. About 0.5%, 0.5% is considered extremely degraded, basically incapable of restoration. It really highlights the urgency, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. We need to act before it gets to that stage.
And the FAO points out that about 85% of all that degradation comes down to erosion by wind and water, often accelerated by, well, us. Tillage, grazing.
Our land management practices.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics. How does this erosion actually happen? Vegetation is key. I know that much. It's the soil's natural armor. The leaves intercept raindrops, stop them hitting the soil full force, and the roots bind everything together. It makes the soil much more resistant.
Like a protective blanket.
Exactly. But when we disturb the clear forests, plow fields, build things, the soil gets exposed. And then you start losing organic matter, nutrients.
And it becomes a vicious cycle. Less vegetation means more erosion, which means even less vegetation.
Precisely. The soil gets weaker, less able to support life, and more vulnerable. There's a photo reference of an indigenous village in Mexico that really illustrates this disturbance effect.
You mentioned raindrops. I saw this incredible photo, I think it's from the U.S. Navy, of just one raindrop hitting bare soil. What's the big deal with a single drop?
It's surprisingly powerful. That impact acts like a tiny explosion. It shatters the soil, aggregates those little clumps.
Ah, okay.
That's called detachment. It frees up individual soil particles. Then either the splash from more drops or flowing water can easily carry them away.
So that's where sheet erosion starts, that sort of subtle removal of a thin layer.
Exactly. That's sheet erosion and also inner-rill erosion, the erosion happening between the little water channels.
Right.
It's less dramatic than gullies,
The big ditches.
Right. But because sheet and rill erosion happen over vast areas, they actually account for the most soil loss worldwide. They're the main culprits affecting long-term farm productivity.
So sheet and interrill are widespread but maybe less obvious. Then things get more concentrated.
Yes. As water starts flowing together, it carves out small channels. Those are rills. Rill erosion.
Okay.
And if those aren't managed, if the flow keeps concentrating, they can grow bigger, deeper, wider, becoming gullies.
Which are the really dramatic cuts in the land.
Exactly, like in those photos from Tennessee or Italy. And it's crucial to remember, sheet and rill move much more soil in total, even if gullies look worse. The FAO drawings show this really well.
That Tennessee gully looks really raw, like it's actively cutting deeper. The one in Italy seems ancient.
And that shows both sides, doesn't it? The immediate power of water carving the land and the long-term legacy. Human actions centuries ago can set off processes that are still shaping the landscape today.
So what makes one place more prone to water erosion than another? What are the key factors?
Several things interplay. Rainfall intensity is a big one. Heavier rain, more power.
Obviously.
Then there's the overall climate. Topography, meaning the slope, steepness, and length, and the soil type itself. How easily does it break apart? How quickly does water soak in?
Right.
Interestingly, semi-arid regions often see the highest erosion rates.
Really? Not the wettest
It
places.
seems counterintuitive, right? But think about it. Semi-arid areas get intense storms, but not enough consistent rain to support dense protective vegetation cover year-round.
Ah, I see. So you get the erosive force without the natural protection.
Exactly. Very dry deserts don't have enough rain for much erosion, and humid regions usually have good plant cover. So it's that middle ground, that combination that could be the worst. The diagram showing erosion versus rainfall on bare soil illustrates this peak.
That makes sense now. Those images of the Dakota Badlands in Tanzania with those little rock caps protecting the soil underneath, they really show that vulnerability.
They do. The Badlands show the power of intense rain on unprotected sediments. And those pedestals in Tanzania are perfect examples of raindrop impact over time. The rock shields the soil just beneath it, while everything around it erodes away.
We keep mentioning natural forces, but back to that first statistic, humans moving more soil than nature. Where's most of that human-caused movement coming from? Is it mostly accidental?
A huge chunk is linked to agriculture. Clearing land removes vegetation. Tillage, even though it prepares the seedbed, breaks up soil structure, leaves it vulnerable.
Especially conventional tillage.
Yes, and overgrazing is another big one. Less plant cover, compacted soil that water can't soak in too easily, so more runoff. Even just leaving fields bare between crops contributes. Hooke's graph really drives home how much agriculture outweighs natural geological movement.
Okay, so the soil's moving, but it doesn't just vanish, right? Where does it actually go?
Good point.
Yeah.
Erosion in one spot often means deposition somewhere else nearby. Soil moves downhill. You might see it build up at the bottom of a slope, maybe burying fences or plants. Figure 17.6 shows that, well, the eroded hilltop and the deposited soil lower down.
So some just gets redistributed locally, but what about when it leaves the field, gets into rivers? What are the off-site problems?
That's where it gets really messy, especially for aquatic life. Sediment washing into streams and rivers, like in Figure 17.7a, causes a whole cascade of issues.
Like what?
It can physically clog fish gills. It makes the water cloudy, blocking sunlight needed by underwater plants.
Which are food and habitat, right?
Exactly. It can foul up water purification systems, making our drinking water more expensive to treat. It can also smother fish spawning grounds on the riverbed.
So it hits reproduction, too.
Wow. And there's more. As sediment builds up on riverbeds, it reduces the channel's capacity to carry water. That means floods can become more severe when heavy rains do come. That image of the sediment plume in the Chesapeake Bay, that's agricultural runoff, largely.
That image is really striking. All that brown, murky water flowing out. And it happens in smaller places, too, right? Like local ponds.
Absolutely. Ponds and reservoirs act like sediment traps. Over time, they fill up with eroded soil. Think of that neighborhood park pond example.
Yeah.
It reduces space for recreation, wildlife, flood storage. Eventually, you often have to dredge it out, which is expensive. And often, that sediment comes from nearby construction sites that didn't have proper controls in place.
You see those flimsy black fences sometimes?
Silt fences, yeah. And if they're not installed right or maintained, they don't do much good. You see a heavy rain, and the stream nearby just turns brown. It connects directly back to that disturbed land.
It's a pretty bleak picture in some ways. Can we actually predict how bad the soil loss might be in a certain place?
Yes, scientists have worked on that for decades. There are models. The Universal Soil Loss Equation, USLE, was a landmark one. Now, the revised USLE, or RU-SLE, is more commonly used.
So they crunch the numbers on different factors.
Right. They estimate average annual soil loss based on things like rainfall patterns, soil type, the slope, how the land is covered and managed. Table 17.3 gives a summary of the factors.
What are some of those key factors? Rainfall.
Yeah, the R factor, rainfall erosivity. It's basically a measure of the rainfall's potential to cause erosion in a specific location. Figure 17.12 shows how it varies across the U.S. Higher in the southeast with those intense thunderstorms.
Lower in the Pacific Northwest with gently rain.
Exactly. Then there's the K-factor, soil erodibility. How susceptible is the soil itself? That depends on texture, structure, organic matter, permeability. Table 17.4 gives some examples.
And the shape of the land.
That's the LS factor, slope length and steepness. Longer, steeper slopes mean faster water flow, more energy, more erosion. The graphs based on Renard's work show that relationship clearly.
These models give an average picture, but you hear about huge amounts of soil washing away in just one big storm.
That's a critical point. That study in the Spanish Vineyard really highlighted it. Over 3 years, most of the soil and nutrient loss happened during just a handful of extreme rainfall events.
So predicting the average is one thing, but managing those extreme events is key.
Absolutely. Designing control measures needs to account for those high-impact storms, not just the average drizzle.
Okay, so we understand the problem, the mechanics, the impacts. What can we actually do to control water erosion? Keeping the soil covered seems like the obvious starting point.
It's fundamental. Plant cover is incredibly effective. That data from West Africa in Table 17.5 is dramatic. Bare soil versus covered soil. The difference in runoff and soil loss is huge.
Those photos in Figure 17.15 make it so clear. Muddy water pouring off bare ground, clear water from the covered plot.
And Figure 17.1 shows how even increasing the percentage of ground cover helps reduce that interval erosion we talked about. Even a light mulch layer makes a difference.
Yep.
Intercepts raindrops, slows water down, helps it soak in.
Like that study in China.
Yeah, in the Kishu province. Increasing shrub density dramatically cut both runoff and soil loss. Vegetation works.
So applying that to farming, what are some practical techniques?
Well, contour farming is a classic one. Planting along the contours of the slope instead of up and down.
Like following the curves of the land?
Exactly. It creates little ridges that slow the water down, help it infiltrate. Figure 17.18, the potato crop one, shows it well.
You have to do it right.
Yes. Figure 17.19 is a warning if the ridges aren't built correctly or get overwhelmed by a massive storm, they can break and actually concentrate flow and cause worse erosion.
Okay. What about strip cropping and terraces?
Contour strip cropping takes it a step further. You alternate strips of different crops along the contour, maybe a row crop like corn, then a dense cover crop like hay.
So more barriers.
Right. And terracing, shown in Figure 17.20, is even more structural, building level or gently sloping steps into the hillside. It dramatically shortens slope length and slows water way down. Very effective, but also more labor-intensive to build.
And handling excess water.
That's where graft waterways come in, like in Figure 17.21. Instead of letting water cut a channel through the field, you create a designed, vegetated channel to carry it safely away. Table 17.7 gives some numbers, p-factors, showing how effective contouring and strip cropping are on different slopes.
These focus on managing water flow. What about protecting the soil surface itself, keeping it covered?
That's the core idea behind conservation tillage. The aim is to leave crop residue stalks, leaves on the soil surface after harvest, instead of plowing it all under like in conventional tillage.
Figure 17.22 shows that contrast. The conventional field versus one done with a chisel plow.
Yes, the chisel plow breaks up the soil but leaves a good amount of residue on top.
And no-till is the ultimate version of that.
Pretty much. With no-till, you plant the next crop directly into the residue of the previous one, or into a cover crop with minimal soil disturbance, just a narrow slot for the seed. Figure 17.23 shows that.
So you maintain almost complete ground cover.
Ideally, yes. And it's incredibly effective at reducing erosion, virtually eliminating it in some cases. Table 17.9 compares residue cover under different tillage systems in Nebraska. No-till leaves the most.
How widely adopted is this?
Table 17.10 shows adoption rates in the U.S. for no-till and cover crops have been increasing, which is good news. But Figure 17.24 points out it's still lagging in many parts of the world. There are challenges, of course, managing weeds, potential compaction. It requires different management skills.
You mentioned turbo till or vertical tillage earlier. Where does that fit?
It's kind of a hybrid. Uses vertical blades to chop residue and mix it shallowly. It aims for some benefits of tillage, like warming the soil while keeping some residue. But if done too aggressively or too fast, it can actually cause significant tillage erosion, which is a whole different issue we need to talk about. It physically moves soil downhill.
Okay, we'll come back to that. But generally, for water erosion control, no-till seems to have major benefits.
Definitely. Look at Figure 17.27 from Ohio. Long-term study showing no-till improves soil properties, water infiltration, water holding capacity, and often matched or beat conventional tillage on corn yields. Reduced soil loss too, of course.
Beyond tillage, are there other ways to use vegetation as barriers?
Yes, vegetative barriers. Planting dense strips of something like grass, Figure 17.28, shows elephant grass along the contour.
How does that work?
They slow the water down and trap sediment moving downslope. Over time, soil builds up behind them, forming natural, gradual terraces.
Like living terraces.
Kind of, yeah. Studies in Iowa showed grass contour hedges significantly cut soil and water loss, especially combined with corn residue and no-till. Table 17.11 summarizes the effects of mulching, contouring, and these hedges on erosion and yields.
What about those big gullies? Once they form, can you fix them?
You can try to stabilize them. Check dams are a common method. Small barriers made of rock, brush, sometimes concrete, built across the gully.
Like little speed bumps for the water.
Essentially, yes. They slow the flow, trap sediment, and allow vegetation to hopefully reestablish. But figure 17.30 shows they have to be built correctly.
How so?
You need to prevent water from cutting underneath or around the sides. Just dumping rocks in haphazardly often makes it worse, redirects the water in damaging ways.
Makes sense. We've focused heavily on water. What was that other term? Mass wasting.
Right, that's a broader category. It's movement driven mainly by gravity. Things like slow soil creep downhill, faster mud flows, or sudden landslides like the one in the photo. Water often plays a role as a trigger, lubricating the soil, but gravity is the main driver. It's different from the continuous action of raindrops or wind.
Okay. And what about animals in forests? They must impact erosion too.
Definitely, both positively and negatively. An undisturbed forest floor with all that leaf litter and dense roots is amazing erosion protection. Figure 17.32a shows that. But human activity in forests can cause problems. Too much foot traffic compacts soil, kills undergrowth. Figure 17.32b illustrates that. And logging, if not done carefully, can lead to major erosion.
So practices like leaving buffer strips along streams.
Exactly. Buffer strips and things like water bars on logging roads to divert water safely off the trail, as shown in figures 17.34 and 17.35. And animals, particularly livestock overgrazing, is a huge issue.
Figure 17.33 shows that. Damaged pasture.
Yeah, both in dry rangelands and even humid areas. Too many animals remove too much vegetation, compact the soil, increase runoff and erosion. It's about management.
What about land disturbed for things like construction? Huge areas get stripped bare. How do you control erosion there?
Speed is key, getting vegetation established quickly. Hydroseeding is one technique, spraying a slurry of seed, mulch, fertilizer, maybe attack a fire to make it stick. Figure 17.36 shows that.
And those mat things you see.
Erosion control mats or blankets, yeah. Figure 17.37. Made of straw, coconut fiber, synthetic materials, they protect the soil surface immediately and help seeds germinate underneath. Even just spreading straw mulch, as in figure 17.38, helps a lot in the short term.
And managing the water runoff from big bare sites.
You need carefully designed channels, sometimes lined with rock, riprap, or sod, to carry water away without causing more erosion. Figure 17.39 shows examples. And protecting stream banks themselves is crucial too.
Stream bank erosion.
Yeah, it could be a major source of sediment. Figure 17.39 also touches on restoration techniques using vegetation, live stakes, which are dormant cuttings that sprout, or sometimes harder structures like rocks to stabilize banks and improve water quality.
And those temporary things at construction sites. Silt fences.
Right. Silt fences, straw bale barriers. Figure 17.40 shows them. Their job is to slow down runoff and trap sediment before it leaves the site. But like check dams, proper installation and maintenance are absolutely critical. A poorly installed silt fence is useless.
Yeah, bigger sites might use bonds.
Sediment retention ponds, exactly. Figure 17.41. Designed to hold runoff long enough for the soil particles to settle out before the water is released. Essential for large disturbances.
Okay, that covers water erosion pretty thoroughly.
Does it?
Let's switch gears to wind erosion. A different challenge, right?
Completely different mechanisms at play. It's most serious in arid and semi-arid regions, obviously, but can happen anywhere. Soil is dry, loose, and exposed.
What drives it?
Key factors are climate, wind speed, dryness topography, soil properties, again, finer particles blow more easily, and crucially, lack of vegetation cover. The maps show the general areas prone to it.
I've seen pictures of those massive dust storms, Texas, China, that they look terrifying. Figure 17.43.
There are dramatic events, and the dust can travel incredible distances, affecting air quality thousands of miles away, even influencing weather patterns.
What kind of damage does wind erosion cause locally?
It can pile soil up along fences, burying them, and roads, figure 17.44a. It can bury young crops, kill them outright, 17.44b. And it causes sandblasting damage. Airborne particles hitting plants can shred leaves and stems, like in 17.44c.
Sandblasting. Ouch. How does the wind actually pick up the soil?
Three main ways, shown in figure 17.45. Suspension, tiny particles lifted high up, travel far. Saltation, medium particles bounce along the surface, kicking up others when they land. This moves the most soil. And soil creep. Larger particles just rolling or sliding along the ground. Table 17.12 gives an idea of the thresholds.
Is there an equation for wind erosion too? Like
Yeah.
USLE for water?
Yes, the revised wind erosion equation, RWEQ. It integrates factors like climate, soil erodibility, field length, surface roughness, and vegetative cover. Table 17.13 lists some key components.
And climate and vegetation interact strongly?
Hugely. That Colorado Plateau study in Figure 17.46 is a great example. It showed how rising temperatures could reduce plant cover, which in turn dramatically increased wind erosion. It's all interconnected.
So how do you control wind erosion? What works?
Windbreaks are a major tool. Rows of trees, shrubs, even tall crops planted perpendicular to the main wind direction. Figure 17.47 shows how they reduce wind speed for a significant distance downwind.
Breaking the force of the wind?
Exactly. Another really interesting technique is from China, using rice straw checkerboards on sand dunes. Figure 17.48.
Checkerboards.
Yeah, they lay straw down in a grid pattern. It physically traps sand, stabilizes the surface, and creates little protected pockets where they can then plant trees or shrubs to eventually take over. Really ingenious.
That is clever. Now, back to tillage erosion. You said the plows themselves move soil.
Yes, it's often overlooked, but can be really significant. Every time a tillage implement like a plow or disc goes across a field, it physically displaces soil. Figure 17.49 and 17.50 illustrate this.
And it tends to move downhill.
Generally, yes, just due to gravity acting on the soil as it's lifted and thrown by the tool. Over many years of repeated tillage, this gradually moves topsoil off the high spots, the knolls and ridges.
Scalping the hilltops.
Essentially, yes, and depositing it in the lower areas, the depressions. It gradually levels the landscape within the field. The amount moved depends on the implement design, the depth, the speed.
You end up mixing subsoil into the top layer on the hills.
That can happen, yeah, reducing productivity up there. And in some places, especially landscapes with rolling hills, studies show tillage erosion can actually move more soil annually than wind or water erosion in that same field.
Wow. More than wind or water.
In some cases, yes. That Ontario study in Figure 17.51 found tillage erosion was highest on the hill crests, while water erosion dominated the steeper side slopes. The combination led to the most severe loss right at the top, which is classic tillage erosion signature.
It's clear there are so many forces at play. This makes understanding the land's limitations really important, doesn't it? You mentioned land capability classes earlier.
Right. That's a system, classes I through 8th, used to categorize land based on its limitations for safe agricultural use. Erosion risk is a huge factor in determining the class.
So class on is the best. Fewest limits.
Exactly. Flat, deep, well-drained soil, minimal erosion hazard. As you go up to Class 8, the limitations, steep slopes, shallow soil, wetness, climate, erosion risk become much more severe. Figures 17.52 and 17.53 and Table 17.15 give an overview. Class 8 land generally isn't suitable for cultivation at all.
So it's about matching the land use intensity to what the land can actually sustain without degrading.
That's the core idea. Respecting the land's inherent capability.
With all these challenges, is there any good news? Are we making progress?
There are positive signs.
Yeah.
Figure 17.54 shows data from the southern high plains in Texas, significant reductions in wind erosion and dust emissions over several decades.
What drove that?
Likely the increased adoption of conservation tillage and other improved practices, because it happened even without major changes in wind speed or rainfall patterns in that period. So management changes made a real difference.
That is encouraging. What about nationally?
Figure 17.55 shows average U.S. soil loss rates from water and wind from 82 to 2007. There was a big drop between 1982 and 1997.
Why then?
That coincides with a big push for conservation tillage and also the Conservation Reserve Program, which paid farmers to take highly erodible land out of production and plant grass or trees.
But the progress slowed after that.
Yeah. The rate of improvement definitely leveled off in the later part of that period. So we made gains, but the job isn't finished. There's still work to do.
Okay, let's try and synthesize all this. We've gone deep into soil erosion, water, wind, tillage, the mechanics, the serious consequences both on-site and off-site, and the control strategies.
And the huge role of human activity in accelerating it.
Right, but also the potential for human ingenuity to mitigate it. The key takeaway seems to be understanding the specific processes at work in a given place.
And the absolute critical importance of keeping the soil covered, whether with living plants or residues. That's probably the single most effective principle.
So thinking back to that first fact, humans moving more soil than nature. Hopefully after this discussion, you, the listener, see that in a new light. You understand the how and why a bit better.
And the downstream effects of all that moving soil.
Exactly. So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. Next time you're out, really look at the landscape. Notice the slopes, the cover, the streams. Can you see signs of erosion or signs of conservation?
Think about how the food on your plate, the clean water you drink, the places you enjoy hiking, how they all connect back to the health of the soil beneath our feet.
It's this vital, often overlooked resource that sustains so much. Understanding these processes helps us appreciate it and maybe think more critically about how we manage it for the future.